You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
Welcome to Threat Vector, the Palo Alto Networks podcast where we discuss pressing cybersecurity threats and resilience and uncover insights into the latest industry trends. I'm your host, David Moulton, Senior Director of Thought Leadership for Unit 42.
It's like finding out like the one thing protecting Fort Knox is like an unlocked screen door. Like it, to get into like the Whopper system is a little ludicrous. So like that was a little bit implausible.
Today I'm speaking with Ben Haskamp, Global Content Leader for Palo Alto Networks and the author of the Control-Alt-Delusion series, which revisits hacker films. Ben has spent years examining the stories that we tell about technology and how they reflect, distort, or anticipate real risk. Today we're going to talk about how classic hacker movies stack up to modern reality, their technical accuracy, their lasting cultural impact, and what we can learn today from their triumphs and delusions. Ben, welcome to Threat Vector. I've been looking forward to having this conversation. It's a little different, a little lighter, and a lot more fun than some of the real serious topics that we jump into on Threat Vector.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to be here. I know we talked about this a long time, so I'm happy to be here with you.
So start us off. Tell me how this whole idea began, the Control-Alt-Delusion series, and then why did you choose old hacker films as something that you wanted to examine through today's lens?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when I started here, I had an idea to launch a thought leadership hub for executives, and we did that under Perspectives. And one of the mandates that I was given was, hey, we should do like a letters from the editor type of thing. And I, embarrassingly enough, said like, well, I'm not really an expert in cybersecurity. There are people that are way smarter than me, like posting things. But then I thought, I was like, well, I have a film background. And I had just watched The Net and thought like,
great film.
Is there, oh yeah. I'd say no notes, but we'll get into that later. And I just thought like, well, could we revisit these movies with a bit of like a cybersecurity lens on them to say, do these movies hold up in any sort of way? So I pitched the idea to some executives here, and they essentially were like, yeah, if you want to put your name on that, go for it. And I got my yes, and I ran out of the room.
Yeah, don't sell past the close, as they say. No, I love it on
exactly
on YouTube. Sometimes you'll see like a fighter pilot grading fighter pilot scenes and what's real and what's not, and it's always fascinating to get that lens. And I think you've brought a little bit of that spirit to what we're going to talk about today with the how hacker films have maybe shaped or warped or sometimes foretold some cybersecurity realities and impacted our culture. From my lens coming into this about a decade ago, this industry, to today, I see how powerful movies and television shows are at moving the public's perception of what we think of as hackers or cybersecurity. And I'm really interested to get into where you see these films really hitting or missing for us.
Yeah, and I think that's like a great point of the public perception, that it is probably the most digestible medium for, the broader audience to sort of, glean like what is cybersecurity like and how is a hack performed. And we'll get into the delusion part a little bit more later. But I think that's like a great point that it is like that's the medium that people digest this stuff.
Yeah. So you've written several of your essays on films like War Games, The Net, Hackers. When you first proposed the series, in the back of your mind, was there a movie that you felt absolutely had to be included because you thought that one was going to be particularly prophetic or maybe you thought it was especially delusional?
I think, when the series launched, the net came to mind, just because that was the impetus for
Right.
this. The one that I really wanted to do, the one I think that maybe affected me the most when I was especially younger, was War Games. That was one that I thought, if this series, works and people enjoy it, the next one I have to do is War Games.
Yeah.
I was very impressionable when I saw this, and I thought, frankly, how easy it was for David Lightman in War Games to hack.
Mhm.
So, and then to sort of working for a cybersecurity company now, to sort of like go back and, well, it's not really like that, but I still love it. So I think the net and War Games were the first two that I thought, man, we have to do these.
Yeah, it's sometimes when I watch a television show, and especially like a police show, and they have the footage and they say enhance, and it
Yeah.
keeps getting more and more clear. As somebody who's worked with images a bunch in my life, my background in design, I'm going, that's not how that works. There are no more pixels. Like, you can only sharpen so much. And then the same thing, I think, with you're talking like, click, click, click on the keyboard. I'm in. And it's a little ridiculous, but, it works for the scene, but not for reality. Ben, what was it that drew you specifically to War Games? You mentioned that was one that was close for you.
That had to have been the first, call it what you will, the cybersecurity movie I saw as a kid. Um, I think this statute of limitations has run out on this, so I'm happy to share this. Is that when I was in high school, I hacked, if you will, into my school system and changed my grade.
Oh, Ben.
Doing the this is a real story. Uh, doing the essentially what he did of uncovering the password, not through hacking. So I do hacking in quotes, not through hacking per se, but sort of a social. I was maybe more of a social engineer,
Okay.
and
Okay.
I took what I was doing at the time in high school directly from War Games, and I was like, wow, is this something that could actually be done? Turns out it could be done. This is however many years ago now, 20 plus years ago. So I think I'm okay.
Yeah.
Um, I did get caught and had to do some time, if you will, a brief suspension, but no, it's all right. But I think like that was to me this kid who kind of was on the outside looking in, and he saw the early stages of the internet sort of as his playground, and was doing it to do really kind of like powerful things. Nothing nefarious, and nothing kind of what we, have come to see what hacking is nowadays. Because if you look at War Games, like what he is doing is pretty harmless. Now, the consequences were pretty dire. But I think for me, like that directly impacted my life in terms of serving, like a 1 week suspension or whatever it was they gave me. That I was like, wow, this is like such like an impactful movie in my life. So again, I had to throw it in there. I'd be irresponsible if I didn't.
Absolutely. So you went back, you watched War Games. Are there any elements that surprised you, positively, negatively, in terms of their technical plausibility?
Yeah, I mean, I think the concept of war dialing, when he's trying to get into the I think it's the games computer system. The concept is still relevant today with like robocalling and things like that. Like that still works. Like I said, the backdoor password idea and concept, that it works in this scenario. I think it moves into the implausibility like a little bit.
Mhm.
Like the hack itself, he finds the game administrator and finds out his son's name is Joshua, and is like, literally the line in the movie is like, it can't be that simple. And he types in Joshua and is like, he's into the system.
Yeah.
So I think like, it's like finding out like the one thing protecting Fort Knox is like an unlocked screen door. Like it, to get into like the Whopper system is a little ludicrous. So like that was a little bit implausible. I'm still unsure why the game system was connected to, the defense system at all. And I've seen this movie probably 20 times. And then I think, the other element of it is like, this was sort of early stages of, artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I think like where the climax of the movie, when he's, they're playing tic-tac-toe and it's learning, how to play the game and realizing that there's a stalemate, and then they play thousands of tic-tac-toes in seconds. And then the machine finally comes to the conclusion like, well, this is pointless. Like the only winning move is not to play the game. Like, I'm not sure an AI system would do that, just suddenly give up and say, wow, you know what? This is kind of futile. So that was that, I think at the time was very compelling in terms of watching a movie of like a computer's like, wow, like we can't win. Let's just stop and like, let's get along. I'm not sure that would ring true today, but again, really, really great in the moment.
Talk to me about how the portrayal of Joshua and its logic compare to some of the more modern adversarial AI or autonomous systems that we see today.
Yeah, I think at its core, Joshua's logic was to win the game. It's very simple. The thing with AI is it's not evil. There's no malice. This computer was like, I am trying to win the game. That's all I'm trying to do. And so if you think about it like this, like if you tell advanced AI, like your job is to eliminate all of my spam emails. Well, it might logically conclude, I will just get rid of all of your emails and, or shut down your entire system or close off the internet to you. And it's like, there, I did it. You're welcome.
You're right.
And it's like, well, no, that's not really what I meant. But to the AI, it's like, well, I won the game. You wanted me to stop this. I stopped it. You're welcome. I think, Joshua was playing chess by the rules, was playing the game by the rules. Now, faster than anyone could play chess, was doing it better than anyone could play chess, where I think today AI is changing the rules of the game constantly. That it's not like they're not playing by the rules. Like, hey, would you like to play chess, AI? And the adversarial AI that we're playing against, it's constantly changing. And it's like Joshua's logic was so simple as like to win the game, where now the logic behind AI is I don't want to say nefarious, but it's not confined to the rules of the chessboard, if you will.
Right. So when we were talking about putting this together, I think you had just written about the net and, how in there's this idea of your identity is erased and you're just gone. And, I kind of laughed at like, yeah, just because you're removed from the internet doesn't mean that you're removed from reality, and people would still remember you. And that kind of buzzed around my head of like, how do you go about pulling off the trope in this movie? But this is a really important cultural movie, where people were sensing, what it was to be fully online. How important was the net in shaping our early perceptions of the internet? And, was it a little dark? Was it a little melodramatic, in a way that was perhaps more Hollywood than reality?
Yeah, it was. I remember I saw this movie in the theater with my dad. So it was 1995. Summer of 95. We just gotten our first computer in the winter of 94.
By the way, what was your first computer? Let's go back.
It was, it was the Macintosh. I don't remember the, Apple
Oh,
Macintosh type.
okay.
It
Yeah.
was, but it was the big desktop, right? It was enormous. And it was, it probably took us 2-3 hours to set it up.
Okay.
The 28.8 modem.
Sure.
We had AOL and then we used Gopher. Do you remember Gopher?
I don't.
It's like this, it's this like hierarchical internet. So you search in like folders almost. So it's almost like a guided internet. You're just sort of going
All right.
from folder to folder. Oh, and it took forever to load like a page. So it was very much you were controlled by what you could see. It was very limited in what you could see. And so I think when I saw the net in the theater, to go from this hierarchical folder clicking to like she's ordering pizza was crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to touch on your point too of like you can't like deleting somebody, entirely. Like this is my dad. We walked out of the movie theater and he was like, "It is ridiculous that Sandra Bullock lives next door to you and you don't know who she is. Like,
Right.
how is that possible? Nobody would know. Nobody would know you." I actually just rewatched the movie last night, and there's a scene because her mom doesn't know who she is because she has dementia. And so she calls her mom because she's at a care facility. And she's like, can you explain to them who I am? I'm your daughter. I'm Angela Bennett, and the mom can't do it. And I'm like yelling at the TV, like, ask anyone else who works there. Like you've checked in several times to see your mom.
Pay the bills.
Like, people know who you, yeah, exactly. What are you doing? So just these things in terms of like logic are fundamentally flawed. But also, it was like this cultural like alarm bell, if you will. Like I think people saw, oh my God, like the internet I can not only order a pizza, but somebody can, delete my identity. Now we've come to know that as it's not profitable to really delete somebody's identity, and I think identity theft now has moved into whatever the
Right.
financial incentive is. To do that. So I think at the time it was ludicrous. It was like, how could this even happen? But also people saw the power of of the internet. And I think today we sort of see it's very because she says at one point, it's so easy for them to do this because our whole lives are online. And now this is 95. Like this is before social media. This is before we've actually like she ordered the pizza but didn't have to pay for it, right? This is like so her credit card information's not in there. But she's talking to people online, she's giving out information online, and the movie was aware enough of that because when they were making it, I think I read some story that this was one element of it that like in order to get back at her, they were going to wipe out her identity. She was like an advertising executive. There's like a whole oral history on it. You should read it. It's pretty good.
Okay.
And they went back to the director and said, the writers were like, listen, like this, an advertising executive who's manipulated online by these guys, like this doesn't really work. But what if we just focused in on the identity part of it and like them manipulating her to do all these things? And one of the writers tells a story that he was like, yeah, we pitched it to the director and he just like tore his rotator cuff playing tennis and he was on all these pills and he wasn't really with it. And he just looked at us and was like, yeah, that sounds good. Do it. And so they ran with it. And
oh man.
And
sometimes
so here
you
it
get
is.
lucky that somebody's a little loopy.
Sometimes you get lucky. But I think, it's the digital identity it did show us then and it's true now. Like the digital identity is fragile. And the systems we trust a lot of the times can, turn on us in the wrong hands.
Yeah. And I think that you're right. The model of deleting somebody and exploiting them individually there's no profit there in comparison to, stealing that identity and turning it into a synthetic and selling it, or using it to, grab other credit cards or other open loans, those sorts of things. Certainly, seem like it's more likely that you'd want to be quiet if you stole the identity, that you had done that. And in this case, it kind of went the other direction, but it did make for some interesting cinema, some entertaining cinema. It's been, 30 years? What do you think the Net's most single enduring cinematic legacy is?
I mean, it has to be digital paranoia. It's still resonant with, everyone knows somebody who is like, I'm not on social media. I don't buy anything online with credit cards. My father-in-law, he still pays his bills by check and is like, oh, I'm not paying any bill online. So it is, no matter how secure, we can say a system is, there's people still have that digital paranoia out there of like what this was and like what it could be. I think in 1995, people's experience being online was like really primitive. And it's, you think about war games even, it's like black screen, green text.
Right.
But like the Net was this mainstream movie with a major movie star at the time. She's coming off Speed. It's huge. This is her next big thing. And it really made this, we talked about this at the top, that it's like Hollywood made this like mainstream, the internet as a powerful tool, but also like as sort of a dangerous tool that people, are even to this day are still afraid of 30 years on.
Well, let's talk about hackers for a minute. This is that like
let's do it.
cult cyber movie. This film has cult status amongst tech audience. I'm sure there's a good sized Venn diagram with threat vector listeners who are also fans of or at least aware of hackers. Maybe it's been a minute because that one was that 95 as well?
95. So that was, the Net was July 95, I believe. And then Hackers was September 95. So kind of that like Armageddon, Deep Impact, like Hollywood was doing. Yeah, exactly.
Ben, from your writing, which scenes deserve the need to be reevaluated?
Okay. I think as we get through talking about Hackers, I want to say the top of this, like I love Hackers. When I first wrote about it and posted about it, I think it got the most engagement. People were excited about it. People had their own stories about it. So I want to get that out of the way. Having said that, it's the most delusional movie we've done so far, in terms of like substance and style. Like it's ridiculous at times. I'm not saying it's not entertaining, but to say like which scenes deserve to be reevaluated, we need a full another podcast episode to do it. But I think when they hack the Gibson, which is the film's supercomputer, for those of you who haven't seen it, they're not looking at lines of code. They're literally flying through like a psychedelic 3D cityscape. And like towers are pulsating and there are these data streams that are shimmering. And, it's, I don't understand like how they thought that made sense. But it, again, we talked about war games and it's a black screen and green text and the Net where she's typing a lot and flashes of code and things like that. And Hackers was like, well, we're going to do something completely different. Yeah. And so I think like, that scene was just this Hollywood hacking trope of, it's Jurassic Park did that a little bit when the girl was trying to get the park back online and she's like clicking through different, buildings and folders and things like that. And I'm really like, wow, that's like really cool that you can do that. And that doesn't really make sense. Hackers just blew that out of the water and said, like, we're going to be flying, and it's like we're in this like city that's like a rave and things like that. Like, that is not how it works, for those of you wondering. Even to this day, still doesn't work that way. Maybe one day, maybe Hackers was 50 years ahead of its time, but the whole scene where they're hacking the Gibson is, I mean, that's as delusional as it gets.
Yeah. Earlier, I think you said the word ludicrous, and that's what comes to mind. Is it was just entertainment, right? But I think because of the topic, it ended up being one of those things that sits in people's minds as like, that's what's going on. There's this mystery. We don't know what's going on in that dark room with those hackers, and then you get these pictures, and that sticks in your memory, right? Like, it's a little easier to remember some of the wild things that come out of a movie like Hackers than a flick of a screen or some binary flowing across in green and black. What did the movie get right, though, in terms of maybe hacker culture or the mindset?
Yeah, it's I think it's the ethos of the hacker. They directly talk about the hacker manifesto. It's the world of the electron and the switch. What the hackers were doing, I think, at the time, like they had a mission statement, right? It captured the spirit of the subculture, and hackers saw the internet not just like as a tool, but it was like this like new frontier, and it was kind of the great equalizer to authority. It was very anti-authoritarianism.
Right.
It's about hackers having intellectual curiosity, and kind of the belief that information should be free and democratic. And those are all like, especially like the early hacker ethos was very much centered around those concepts, that mission statement. It's devolved, certainly to some extent, and we've sort of, like in all things, we've two roads diverged in a yellow wood type of thing of like, okay, well, I'm going down this path where it's the great equalizer from a financial incentive for me, and you're an attacker, or the great defenders of still being like, well, this is a great equalizer for me to defend against you. So the ethos is still there. It's just sort of branched off in ways that are a bit more nefarious today, but certainly that mission statement at the time was like it was real. I mean, the Hacker Manifesto is real, and they wrote it directly into this movie. And honestly, kudos to them for doing that.
So back in September, I ended up talking to Kyle Wilhoit about hacker culture on Threat Vector, and one of the things that he talked about was there was a point when it wasn't so professional to be a defender or a cybersecurity professional. It was a place of curiosity, and you'd ask, to quote him, "What if?" And anything was possible. And I think that there's then a moment where things change, and that even in the beginning, you were talking about how you were looking at this inspiration to get into the school and change a grade, right? Like, the intent was like, can I do this? Not can I shut down the school, right? And sure, maybe you went a little far and changed an A to a B or whatever it was that you did there, Ben. But I think that that's one of the things that has also changed it is the infusion of money on both sides, the need for risk reduction because of the exposure, and maybe Hackers in 1995 is just a fun thing to go back to and look at how out of its mind, how delusional the movie was, for a forward-looking piece. Do you think a movie like Hackers 2, Hackers 3, Hackers 4 could ever exist, giving in today's world? Or would it be a very, very different type of film?
Yeah, I mean, well, to go back, I think you hit the nail on the head of just seeing what we could do, seeing what was possible. Like it wasn't about changing the grade. It was about, can we do this? And it was almost like it was about exploration, and I think what hackers did so great was like capturing that rebellious, almost utopian spirit. Where if you do, I mean, if you're making Hackers 2, 3, and 4, and we'll get into it, I think, some of the later movies and TV shows that, have come out recently, and how they kind of capture the hacker ethos and portrayal of them. But, I think Hackers 2, 3, and 4 definitely looks like a bit more nefarious. We might be following the bad guys a little bit more. There might be some sort of gray area where I think when these movies came out, it was black and white. It was, the plague was attacking, I think it was shipping containers. And
Where
they
have
were
I heard
fighting
the
back.
shipping container is under attack story before?
Right, exactly.
Not gotcha.
But it was very black and white. And I think, we're making it today. There's some sort of, gray area and some sort of, what do they call those guys? Anti-heroes. And
Yeah.
it's a little bit grayer. But there might be more of a light on the defenders, if you will. I think what Hackers did, what was great was like everyone saw them as these bad guys. The hackers as bad guys. They're the FBI's tracking them the whole way, and they're fighting against them while fighting this corporate hacker, and he's trying to pin it on them. Like it was, from a storytelling standpoint, really compelling. But, again, the style and the substance of it kind of got in its own way at times. Again, I love Hackers, everyone. Don't put me on blast. I do love it.
Don't at you. How have these movies shaped public perception of hackers over the years, especially as more cyber attacks have occurred?
I mean, I think, I don't know if it's a hot take, but I think almost exclusively, these movies, for good or bad, it is shaping, public perception. It's shaping policy. It's think about what war games did and influencing actual policy, with Reagan and NSDD, I believe, that it's like, this is, he watched the movie and turned to his national security advisor and said, could that happen? And he's like, I don't know, probably. And he's like, okay, we need to do something about this. And, like hackers, I'm not saying the Hacker Manifesto wasn't, popular, but it was probably less well known. And then what hackers did was popularize it, right?
Yeah.
And people, so it is like these movies, I don't want to say have a responsibility for shaping the public perception, but like it certainly, they have shaped it. And I think they continue to shape it even with movies that are coming out today.
Do you see security professionals today who maybe lean into some of these types of narratives when they're communicating with non-technical audiences, maybe for better or for worse?
All of us have relationships with these movies. I think that's what is so great about it. It, brings us together, whether you're, an engineer or, a CEO or a CFO. Like you have seen these movies. You've experienced, what they are. And I think, to give Hollywood credit about anything, they really did a good job of like simplifying really complex things about cybersecurity. And I think like it provides this common ground for technical and non-technical audiences. I probably am more of a non-technical audience member. So like if I'm on a board and somebody was talking to me about, well, this is why I'm non-technical, but like, let's say, like mainframe vulnerabilities. Okay. And, identity security, I'm more inclined to say to them like, well, explain this to me like I'm 5, and maybe that, the CISO would say to me, well, imagine a scenario like the net where our customer database is held hostage or it's erased, before our quarterly earnings call. Then I'm more like, oh my God, like what do we do to protect this now? So I think like, the movies did a good job of creating that urgency and creating that common ground for us to understand like the dangers around it, even if it is through a melodramatic lens. I'm okay with that.
A number of our guests this year have talked about using storytelling and talking to boards in a way that it gives them a narrative where they can see, the first act, the second act, the third act, or they can see the consequences. They understand the stakes that they're up against, as opposed to giving you here's the dashboard readout, here's the technical analysis of our firewalls, whatever it might be that the CISO, a very technical role, might speak to the rest of the security team in. And I think that it's important to say, like, maybe the lasting legacy of some of these films is common experience and some language, and then to even be aware that this is a space that you need to be considering, whether it's a young kid who's going to go into film school and write about it in the future, right? It made an impression, or somebody who's going to sit on a board and accept the risk or fund the control that the company needs or the organization needs to put some sort of risk mitigation in place. I think that those narratives are the kind of things that can be really powerful. But as you pointed out a couple times, some of them are just crazy, and it ends up leaning into this idea of stoking fear and getting into misinformation even. These are older films. I want to jump into some of the content or the TVs and movies and shows that are a little newer. Do you see any that are doing a better job of balancing great storytelling, but hitting on a level of realism that maybe these early films didn't hold themselves to because they're cinematic? Eat your popcorn, watch your movie, walk out going, wow.
My gut reaction is to say not really. The one thing I will call out though is Mr. Robot.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mr. Robot really did a nice job of showing audiences what it was like and how it is now. The act of cybersecurity is still to this day, and I don't want to get into an agentic AI conversation on this particular pod, but it is still largely a person staring at a screen. I'm not positive that's inherently cinematic. So writers falling back on those tropes of frantic typing and these like magical progress bars and the visual metaphors that still exists today. I think, maybe one other example would be Leave the World Behind. It's not about hacking. It's not really about cybersecurity. It was about, I guess it was about cybersecurity because it was a hack, but, they didn't show it per se. They showed the consequences of it. They showed the aftermath of it, and that social trust can erode. But I think, if there is one that I'd say, like, yeah, pretty good job, it'd be Mr. Robot.
Ben, we're coming to the end here, but I want to get Ben's recommendation on your favorite, most ridiculous but entertaining scenes that you think maybe provoke a great conversation or reaction from the audience, independent of whether they're possible or ever had been possible.
Yeah, I think that, there's a lot, it's where do we begin type of thing, to maybe give people some spoilers, the movies that we have coming out for future Control Alt Delusion. We got Sneakers coming up. We have Disclosure. We have Leave the World Behind. We're going to do 0 Day. The one that sticks out for me the most is Swordfish. Halle Berry, Hugh Jackman, John Travolta. It might be the most delusional one I've seen yet. We went from guessing a password with Matthew Broderick to Hugh Jackman writing this like complex worm. And like, I don't want to get into like, he's got a gun to his head and other things are going on. And he's like, you got 60 seconds to write this worm or I'm going to kill you. And, he does it. He does this thing. And pretty much everyone who's seen this movie and is an expert in this is like, not only would this take longer than 60 seconds, it would take weeks, if not months. And this is like with a team of people.
Right.
So I think like Swordfish was to me like the moment that they said, we're going to make this sexy and we don't care about like any sort of logic or realism at all. Like we're just going to go for it. And I know people saw that movie for a bunch of different reasons, but I think like that one scene, if you want to look it up on YouTube, it's spectacular. Or wait until December when we're releasing the Swordfish Control Alt Delusion.
Yeah, I wasn't working in security at the time, and even an uninformed Dave Moulton at that moment of seeing that movie and that scene, I was just like, no, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. No,
so,
I mean, yeah, it is. Yeah. It is like, and I think people knew that, and people were like, the net did like, is this possible? War games, is that possible? And everyone was like, this is crazy.
Well, Ben, I know you've got the series out there. I want to ask where listeners can find you out on your socials, and tell them where they can go read Control Alt Delusion, and then I'll make sure that we've got that in our show notes.
Yeah, Control Alt Delusion is up on paloaltonetworks.com/perspectives. You can find all the articles there. We got 3 right now. Like I said, we're going to do the next one coming out is Sneakers, Memory of Robert Redford. You can find me on LinkedIn at Ben Haskamp. Hit me up there. Let me know if there's a movie that I'm missing or that you should recommend to me. But you can find me there and check it all out.
Ben, maybe after you take down the Hollywood greats, it's off to Bollywood and to see what great international films touch on this topic.
We'll have to, because this well will run dry at some point. So we'll have to tap into other things. The Matrix is still on our radar. But we'll definitely have to start taking some liberties at some point to keep the series going.
Well, thanks for an awesome conversation and a little bit of a divergence from our usual topics today. A little lighter, a little bit different level of fun, talking about how hacker movies have distorted and sometimes foreshadowed cybersecurity.
No, this was a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
That's it for today. If you like what you heard, please subscribe wherever you listen and leave us a review out on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Those reviews and your feedback really do help me understand what you want to hear about. You can contact me directly about the show. Just shoot me an email at threatvector@paloaltonetworks.com. I want to thank our executive producer, Mike Heller, our content and production teams, which include Kenny Miller, Joe Betancourt, and Virginia Tran. Original music and mix by Elliot Peltzman. We'll be back next week. Until then, stay secure, stay vigilant. Goodbye for now.